They do not hate you because of what you did. You have been sitting with that assumption for years, replaying conversations, scanning your behavior for the thing you said, the moment you stepped wrong, the offense you must have committed without knowing it. You have been apologizing, sometimes out loud, sometimes just in the architecture of your choices, for something you never actually did. That is the trap. And you walked into it willingly because you were taught that hostility has a cause you can identify and fix. You were taught that if people treat you coldly, you probably earned it. Find the mistake, correct the behavior, restore the approval. That is the system they handed you in childhood, and you have been running it ever since. But here is what they never told you. The most dangerous form of social hostility has nothing to do with your behavior. It is triggered by your presence, by what you represent, by the mirror you hold up simply by being who you are becoming.
And the more clearly you see this, the more untouchable you become. There are 7 specific ways your presence silently detonates people around you. And the 7th one explains why the people closest to you are often the ones who resent you most. If you are not ready for this, close the video. Go back to the crowd. But if you are willing to understand what is actually happening underneath every cold shoulder, every subtle dismissal, every relationship that quietly curdled for no reason you could name, stay. You were brainwashed to believe that social tension is about conflict, about something said or done. Schools taught you to resolve disputes. Therapists taught you to communicate better. Religion taught you to apologize and make amends. The entire apparatus of social conditioning assumes that when people pull away from you, you have malfunctioned. Something broke. Fix it. Machiavelli understood something far older and far darker.
He wrote that men will sooner forgive the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. What he grasped, and what you were never supposed to learn, is that people's reactions are almost never about you. They are about what your existence costs them psychologically, their inheritance, their self-image, the story they need to tell about themselves to keep functioning. Carl Jung spent decades mapping the architecture of this. He called the hidden mechanism the shadow, the accumulated mass of everything a person has rejected about themselves in order to maintain the face they show the world, the ambitions they buried, the envy they cannot admit, the hunger for more that they suppressed because expressing it felt dangerous or shameful. The shadow does not disappear. It waits. And when something in the external world brushes against it, the psychological system reacts with the force of a cornered animal.
I am going to show you exactly how your presence triggers that animal in 7 distinct ways. But be warned. Some of what follows will apply to you just as much as to the people around you. That is not an accident. That is the point. Phase 1. You reflect what they have buried. The average person does not resent you because you are disciplined. They resent you because your discipline is a mirror, and mirrors cannot be argued with. You are not lecturing anyone. You are not posting transformation content or dropping unsolicited advice. You are simply living differently, working at something, getting serious, moving towards something that matters to you. And something shifts in certain people who have been standing still. The jokes get sharper, the comments get more dismissive. You are told you have changed, as if change were an accusation. Robert Greene in the 48 Laws of Power identifies this precisely. Appearing too perfect generates envy and triggers hostility. But it is not your perfection they are reacting to. It is their own reflection in you. Your consistency reflects their avoidance. Your progress reflects their excuses. You placed no mirror there deliberately, but there it is. And some people would rather destroy the mirror than look at what it shows. The psychological framework here is what Leon Festinger called cognitive dissonance, the profound discomfort a person experiences when their self-concept conflicts with observable reality. When someone who believes they are capable watches another person simply do the thing they have been avoiding, the internal system destabilizes. The easiest resolution is not to close the gap. It is to discredit the person who exposed it. Napoleon understood this asymmetry. After his early campaigns, the men who had known him as a minor Corsican artillery officer became his fiercest enemies within the military establishment. Not because he had wronged them, but because his ascent made their stagnation visible. Cold instruction. Stop softening your progress to manage their comfort. Let the mirror stand. The discomfort it creates is not your responsibility to resolve. Does that feel harsh? Good. Because phase 2 is the one that explains why people you genuinely love will quietly position themselves against you. Phase 2. You represent what they surrendered. Resentment does not run downward. This is one of the most important things you will ever understand about human psychology. People do not resent those who are clearly beneath them. Resentment runs upward, toward the person who embodies a possibility the resentful individual quietly abandoned. The colleague who actually finishes things. The friend who left the relationship that was poisoning them. The family member who went back to finish what they started. These people are not attacking anyone. Their existence is the indictment. They are walking proof that the thing could have been done. And the people around them, people who once faced the same crossroads and chose differently, experience that proof as a quiet verdict. The psychological mechanism here is what researchers call counterfactual thinking, the involuntary mental simulation of the path not taken. It is automatic, it is largely unconscious, and it is profoundly painful. The mind's most efficient escape from that pain is not to revisit the choice. It is to delegitimize the person whose existence keeps triggering the simulation. You are lucky. You are arrogant. You do not understand what I had to give up. Julius Caesar triggered this in the Roman Senate with precision. Men who had spent decades accruing power through careful compromise watched a man who seemed to operate outside the rules, and the cognitive dissonance was intolerable. They did not plot against him because he threatened the Republic. They plotted against him because his existence reminded them of what they had bargained away to get where they were. Cold instruction. You cannot resolve this by shrinking. The only thing that stops triggering the counterfactual in them is ceasing to be the person you are becoming. That is not a trade you should consider. Phase 3. You stopped needing their approval. Most social systems, friendships, families, workplaces, are held together by invisible architecture, mutual dependency. One person needs validation, another needs to feel needed. Someone provides emotional labor, someone else provides the sense of being the rescuer. The whole system maintains equilibrium as long as everyone stays in their assigned position. When you start becoming psychologically independent, when you stop chasing approval, stop over-explaining your decisions, stop calibrating yourself to what other people think, the leverage disappears. The usual emotional levers stop working. You do not bite on the bait. You do not collapse under the guilt. You do not brighten when the compliment arrives. From your perspective, this is growth. From their perspective, it registers as rejection. Because what you have actually done, even unintentionally, is remove them from a position of informal power they may not have known they depended on. Attachment theory, particularly the work of John Bowlby and later Mary Ainsworth, maps this precisely. When an anxiously attached individual, someone whose nervous system has been calibrated around securing proximity and approval from others, encounters a securely attached person who simply does not perform the expected emotional responses, the experience is disorienting at a physiological level. The secure individual is not cold. They are simply not running the same program. And the absence of that program reads as threat. The Spartans trained this into their warriors deliberately. The agoge was not merely physical conditioning. It was the systematic removal of approval dependency. A Spartan was not supposed to need the crowd. And that self-sufficiency made them genuinely dangerous in ways that skill alone could not account for. Cold instruction. Identify the people in your life who only become warm when you need something from them. That warmth is not affection. It is the comfort of restored leverage. Note it. Do not punish it. Simply stop mistaking it for connection. You are still here. Good. The fragile ones already left. Phase 4. They cannot predict you anymore. Social manipulation, the everyday, mostly unconscious kind, depends entirely on predictable reactions. If they push this button, they get that response. Guilt produces apology. Criticism produces effort to earn back approval. Flattery produces softness. The entire script functions on your compliance with the expected reaction. When you stop reacting the way people expect, the script collapses. You do not become hostile, you simply become unreadable. You watch the move without responding to it. You do not reward the bait. You do not perform the emotion that was solicited, and for someone who has been running that playbook, unconsciously, habitually, your non-reaction is profoundly destabilizing. Joe Navarro, the former FBI behavioral analyst whose work on nonverbal communication has been used in high-stakes interrogations, describes this as baseline disruption. When someone expects a predictable baseline reaction and it does not materialize, the brain registers anomaly. Anomaly triggers vigilance. Vigilance can quickly tip into hostility, particularly in individuals with poor emotional regulation, because the non-reactor is perceived as having hidden information, knowing something they do not, holding something back. Cosimo de' Medici mastered this in 15th century Florence. He spoke little, revealed nothing, and maintained an expression of genial neutrality while running the political machinery of an entire city-state. His opponents perpetually underestimated him and perpetually regretted it. His silence was not passivity. It was a weapon. Cold instruction. The next time you feel the impulse to fill silence, to explain your reasoning, to perform the emotional reaction that is being solicited, hold it. 5 seconds. Hold it longer. You are not being unkind. You are refusing to give away intelligence for free. Phase 5. You stopped maintaining the fiction. Every social group operates on unspoken agreements. There are things we do not name. Behaviors we collectively agree to normalize. Dynamics everyone privately notices and publicly ignores. These agreements are not always malicious. Often they are simply the path of least resistance, the social lubricant that keeps things from combusting. but they are fictions. And maintaining a fiction requires everyone's participation. When you stop participating, when you decline to laugh at the thing that is not actually funny, when you name the dynamic everyone is pretending not to see, when you simply decline to agree with something you genuinely do not agree with, you become a problem. Not because you attacked anyone, because you broke the agreement. And groups protect their agreements with surprising aggression, usually without consciously realizing that is what they are doing. Galileo did not threaten the church because his mathematics were dangerous. He threatened it because his willingness to name what he saw exposed the collective agreement to look elsewhere as a choice. That was the intolerable part, not the heliocentrism, the refusal to perform ignorance. Cold instruction. Locate the fictions you are still maintaining to keep peace. Not all of them are worth destroying. That is naive strategy. But know which ones you are maintaining out of genuine care and which ones you are maintaining out of fear. That distinction defines your sovereignty. Phase 6. You started saying no. For a long time you were easy to access, easy to lean on, easy to take for granted. You said yes when you meant no. You absorbed things you should not have absorbed. You made yourself available to people who were rarely available to you. The people around you experienced this as comfort, the comfort of knowing there was someone in their orbit who would not require them to be accountable for how they behaved. And then something changed. You started drawing lines. He pulled back from the arrangements that were costing more than they returned. He said no and meant it. Dr. Henry Cloud, in his clinical work on psychological boundaries, identifies what follows as entirely predictable. The people who benefited from your lack of limits, even people who genuinely care about you, experience your new boundary as an act of aggression. Not because they are evil, because the previous arrangement was a known quantity. It was comfortable. You are now requiring them to renegotiate something they never had to negotiate because you never asked them to. What follows is rarely honest. Nobody says they liked it better when they could walk all over you. They say you have changed. You are cold now, difficult, selfish. What they are describing is the end of a deal they never had to earn. Cold instruction. Let them describe it however they need to. Your only obligation is to be clear, not to be comfortable for them. Phase 7. You are moving forward, and the gap is showing. This is the one that touches the people you actually love. When you change, not superficially, not in your aesthetic or your vocabulary, but in how you see the world and what you are willing to accept and what you are building toward, you create distance. Not because you are trying to leave anyone behind, not because you have decided you are better, but because you are factually in a different place than you were. The people who have not moved feel that gap. And the question the gap asks silently, without mercy, is, why not me? Why am I still here? That question is too uncomfortable to sit with honestly, so the mind converts it. The question becomes a judgment. The judgment gets turned outward. Your growth becomes evidence that you think you are exceptional. Your new priorities become an implicit rejection of the old ones and of the people who still hold them. You did none of this on purpose, but their reaction is not really about you. It is about what your movement forces them to feel about their own stillness. Jung called the process of genuine self-development individuation, the long, painful work of becoming whole. He understood that people who are genuinely engaged in it become impossible to fully control.
They do not stay in assigned roles. They do not perform expected reactions. And their very presence creates an existential disturbance in the people around them who have chosen, consciously or not, to remain in the comfortable prison of their persona. Your becoming is a quiet indictment of everyone who decided not to. You did not write that indictment. You cannot retract it. And the only escape from it that would actually work is to stop becoming. Comment below. I move forward regardless. This path is not warm. Let no one tell you otherwise.
There is a version of this philosophy that gets sold as empowerment, as if understanding these dynamics means you float above them, untouched. That is a lie, and it is a comfortable one. The reality is that watching relationships dissolve, not because of anything you did wrong, but simply because of who you are becoming, is a particular and sustained kind of pain. The people who drift away are often people you loved. The distance is real. The loss is real. Machiavelli wrote The Prince while stripped of power, tortured, exiled to his farm outside Florence. He had been imprisoned by the very Medici he spent years trying to ingratiate himself with. He wrote his most enduring work not from a position of triumph, but from the cold periphery of complete political failure. And that text changed the architecture of Western thought for 500 years. He understood that the wolf does not beg to be understood by the sheep. The wolf does not adjust its nature to make the flock comfortable.
The man in exile does not apologize for seeing clearly. He writes. He thinks. He builds from the margins what the crowd could not build from the center. This freedom is cold. The relationships built on your smallness will not survive your growth. The approval that was conditioned on your compliance will disappear when you stop complying. The fictions that held certain social worlds together will collapse when you stop performing them. But it is the only freedom that is truly yours, because it does not depend on anyone's permission to exist. You made it here. That is not nothing. Most people stopped the moment this got uncomfortable. They went back to the crowd, to the comfortable explanations, to the version of events where everything wrong in their social lives is someone else's miscommunication. You did not. Do your shadow work. Not to become someone who sees through everyone while remaining opaque yourself. That is just a more sophisticated persona, a more elaborate prison. Do it to become more real, more integrated, more honest about the places in you that still project, still resent, still react to mirrors you did not consciously place. The goal is not enlightenment. The goal is to know the difference between a relationship ending because you are moving forward and a relationship ending because you did something wrong. That distinction, held clearly, is worth more than any social approval you could collect. Subscribe not because I asked you to. Subscribe because you are done mistaking hostility for feedback and approval for evidence that you are on the right path. What I cannot say in the main feed, the deeper maps of power, perception, and psychological sovereignty, is behind the membership. You know where to find it.